Okay, so today we're going to be going through an IELTS listening practice test, and we're going to be looking through the answers to the first part of the listening and talking about how do you know it's the answers and some general skills for IELTS academic listening. Okay, so we're on the website, we're going to go through to academic tests. Today we're doing Oxford Test Volume 1, so we're going to go down to Take Test, and let's take a look at the listening. So we're going to take the test here. So you can see on the website we've got the recording up here, and you can play it and skip it along. And then we've got the questions down here, questions down to number 10, and then our answer sheet, okay? It's where you're going to be selecting and entering your answers. All right, so let's take a look at the first part of the test.
Section 1. You will hear a man phoning about an advertisement for a car. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4.
Okay, so I always tell my candidates in the IELTS, the main benefit that you can have in the IELTS is by taking the time that they recommend to look through the questions and the answers, okay? This is really crucial. Spend as much time reading the questions as possible. So we say questions 1 to 4, who provides the following features of the car? Okay, so it's A, if the person who sells the car is providing the features. It's B, if it's the buyer of the car who's providing the features. And it's C, if the manufacturer of the car provides the features, okay? So their example is there a spare tire? It's A, because the person who sells the car is providing the spare tire, okay? So then if we look at question 1, who provides the ownership documents with the car? Okay, question 2, who provides the extra set of keys? Question 3, who already fits the roof rack? And 4, what about the sound system? Okay, so when we look through these questions during the listening, we can know what kind of keywords we're listening out for. Okay, so we're listening for stuff about the documents, keys, roof rack, and sound system. Okay, so let's keep going.
As you can see, an example has been done for you. Only on this occasion, the recording relating to this example will be played first.
Hello, So Billig Motors. Andy here. Can I help?
Oh, hello, Andy. This is Mr. Fletcher. John Fletcher. I'm calling because I'm interested in one of the cars I saw on your website.
Thank you, John. Which car are you interested in then?
Let's see. I was just looking at it. Here we go. C550 light blue, excellent condition. Is it still available?
It is indeed. Now, I'm sure you've got a few questions for me. But let me just tell you a bit about how we operate and what you can expect when you buy a car from us.
Sure.
So the first thing is, we like to get our vehicles clean and into excellent shape before the customer sees or buys them. We've checked the engine, topped up the fluids, and made sure there is a sound spare tire and working lights for the automobile.
Okay, so you can hear that in that one for the example, he said we make sure there's a spare tire. Okay, so he's the guy who's talking is the man who's selling the car, so that's how we know the answer is A, it's the car seller. Okay, because he gave some examples of the things they give you with the car. Okay, so that's where we get the example from. And so now let's keep listening and remember that we're listening for our keywords, ownership documents, keys, roof rack, and sound system. Okay. So the key point with IELTS is that once you've checked the questions, you know what keywords you're listening for because you only hear it once and it tends to go quickly.
The spare tire is provided by the seller, so letter A has been written in the space. Now we will begin. You should answer the questions while you listen, because you will only...
Now, I'm sure you've got a few questions for me, but let me just tell you a bit about how we operate and what you can expect when you buy a car from us.
Sure.
So, the first thing is we like to get our vehicles clean and into excellent shape before the customer sees or buys them. We've checked the engine, topped up the fluids, and made sure there is a sound spare tire and working lights for the automobile.
That's good, and certainly a couple of things off my list. Are the ownership papers with the car, or do I need to send my details to the driver's agency?
Okay, so we heard here, he actually said in the answer, ownership papers. Okay, and this is something that they often do in IELTS, is where they're all about paraphrasing, and I'm sure you know that. but they'll try and use slightly different words to the words in the question. So he said, I had the word ownership, and that sort of flagged me up. I'm like, okay, we're talking about ownership. The key information is coming up next. So he's saying, are the ownership papers with the car, or do I need to send my details to the driver's agency? Okay, so now let's listen and see what the answer was.
No. One benefit of buying from a dealer like us is that the papers stay with the car, and once it's sold, we notify the government of the ownership change.
Okay, so what did he say? He said that the paper stays with the car and we notify the government of the ownership change. Okay, so the paper stays with the car, so we know that it's coming from the car's seller. Okay, so our answer is going to be A. So the car's seller provides the ownership documents. Okay, all right, so now we're listening for keys. Okay, the other good thing about IELTS listening is the answers come in order as they talk through. Okay, so now we're listening for our next keyword, which is about the keys.
So you always have the documents to hand.
And how about the keys? Is there only one set of keys, or do I get a copy?
Okay, so we've heard our keyword keys. Is there only one set of keys, or do I get a copy? Let's find out.
Well, new cars these days are only ever sold with one set of keys, and that's what there is with this car. If you want a spare set, you'll have to get them made.
Okay, so did we hear what he said? Okay, we had the same issue of paraphrasing. He said, if you want a spare set of keys. Okay, so the question says extra set of keys, but in the script, they paraphrase that to spare set of keys. Okay, when we talk about a spare set, it means an extra thing. Okay, so for example, my house keys, I'm like, I have my house keys, but then I have a spare set. Or if I'm printing out test papers, I'm like, everyone has one copy of the test paper, plus I have a spare. Okay, so spare means extra. So this is where your vocabulary is important, not just for your writing and your reading, but also for your listening, because you need to be able to hear these paraphrases when they come out. So what he said in the answer was that the car only comes with one set of keys. If you want a spare set, if you want an extra set, you have to make it yourself. Okay, so you have to make it yourself. The person who buys the car has to make the extra set of keys. Okay, so that's where they're trying to catch you out. That you might just hear that the car comes with one set of keys and think that it's the seller, but actually they're talking about the spare set, the extra set, so it comes with the buyer. So that's why the answer is B.
It's legal, but a bit expensive. They are the original keys. No copies have been made so far.
Well, I like to have an extra copy, so I guess I'll have to add that to the price. What about any kind of auxiliary items? You know, roof rack, tow bar, stereo, that kind of thing?
If the manufacturer provided those sort of things when the car was built, we try to make sure they are still there. This car has got the original roof rack, but the previous owner had replaced the stereo with an expensive one that he then kept.
Okay, so there was sort of two answers there. We talk about the roof rack, and then he also goes on to talk about the stereo sound system. Okay, but when we look at question 3, we heard that they talked about roof rack specifically. Okay, so we heard it when the customer asked, what about any kind of auxiliary items? You know, roof rack, that kind of thing. And then the salesperson answers by saying, if the manufacturer provided those sort of things when the car was built, we try to make sure they are still there. This car has got the original roof rack. Okay, so when we say roof rack already fitted, does the car come with a roof rack? Has it already been put on the car? Okay, and they say it was manufactured with one and it's still there. So that's how we know it's C. The manufacturer of the car already fitted the roof rack. Okay. Now, when we were just listening there, we heard that they started talking about the stereo system. Okay, so let's just go back a little bit and listen again to what they said about the sound system.
The car was built. We tried to make sure they are still there. This car has got the original roof rack, but the previous owner had replaced the stereo with an expensive one that he then kept. We've put in a bottom range, one which might suit your needs. I'm afraid there's no tow bar on the vehicle.
Okay, so he talked about stereo. So again, they're paraphrasing. Instead of sound system, okay, this is testing, do you know what a sound system is? So it's like a radio, a stereo, something that you play music through. So the salesperson says the previous owner had replaced the stereo with an expensive one that he then kept. Okay, so the previous owner put in a stereo, then he kept it for himself, so it's no longer in the car. We've put in a bottom range one, which might suit your needs. So we've put in, so the person selling the car has installed a bottom range one. So like a cheap stereo system, basically. When we say top range, we mean expensive. When we say bottom range, we mean cheap. Okay? So we're saying, okay, the person selling the car is replaced and put in a new stereo system. So it's the car's seller who's providing the sound system. Okay? So that's how we know the answers to the first 4 questions. All right? So key things, know your paraphrases, be looking at the questions and answering as you go through by listening for these keywords. Okay, so then moving on to questions 5 to 7.
Okay, that's fine. I only listen to the radio anyway, but it's good to have the option. I don't suppose there are halogen lights on the car?
I'm afraid not, sir. If you want special headlights and things like that, there is a good auto outfitter near here.
The car. Let me check my notes. Where are they? Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10.
Okay, so we're looking at questions 5 to 10, and this is one of the more tricky parts of IELTS where you've got to be typing in the correct answer. So be careful of your spelling. Spelling does count. So let's have a look. These are notes on the used car. We're looking for some miles. So this is probably going to be a number. When does the car need next? This is probably going to be something to do with maintenance. When does the car next need its checkup or its insurance? The body paint good condition. Is it all right to, this is going to be some kind of verb. Is it all right to see it or buy it this week? So we know this is probably going to be some kind of verb going in here. Is it all right to see it this week, or is it all right to test drive it this week? So part of this is getting good at guessing what information you think is going to come up or filling it in with your own general knowledge, okay? I'm sure most of you are familiar with cars and the process of buying or renting a car. So part of the skill in IELTS is being able to read through and kind of predict. So as I'm looking through here, I'm thinking, okay, we've got a number, we've got something to do with car maintenance, and it's going to be some kind of verb in here, okay? Then we look down at number 10. The test drive form, so this is more simple. So we've got the date of the drive, so obviously we're listening for day, month, something like that. We've got the name, the address, something road, so it's going to be the name of the road. Often they spell this out for you in the IELTS, so you've got to make sure that these are easy points to pick up. So you should know that you've got to be good at dates, numbers, and the alphabet. So when they spell it out for you, you're able to spell things correctly. If you spell something incorrect in your IELTS, they will not give you credit for it. They will mark you incorrect, okay? And then for this email, something@gmail.com is probably going to be the name of the person or the name of something here, okay? So that's the crucial thing to be doing when they give you this time to look at the questions, reading them and taking some kind of guess at what you think is going to be appearing in this gap, okay? So that gives you a head up about what kind of information you're going to be listening for. If you want to make a note on your test paper, you can make a note in English, you can make a note in your first language, whatever that is, if you want to, but it just gives you a little bit of structure about you should know what it is that you're listening for as you go through. Okay, so now let's take a listen to the answers.
Questions 5 to 10. All right, here they are. My first question is about the mileage. Your website has that at around 68,000. Is that the actual mileage on the car, or is that from its latest government inspection?
That's the correct mileage at the moment, John. The motor test certificate actually has it at 66,000.
Okay. So that first answer came up very quickly when they first started, okay? So that's why it's important in the IELTS to make sure that you're on it as soon as the question starts playing, okay? So the answer here was 68,000 miles because we can see from the notes that he's reading from. This is the person who's calling in about the car, buying the car, okay? Who's made these notes. So we can see it's something miles, and they've got the question, is this the correct current mileage? Okay, and so that's what the customer asks. My first question is about the mileage. Your website has that at around 68,000. Is that the actual mileage, or is that from its latest government inspection? Okay, so you can tell it here, he's written down what he's seen on the website and he's asking the question. So that's how we know it's 68,000 and not what the salesperson then says later on. Okay, so again, numbers, make sure you're okay with your numbers, especially millions, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, okay? These are easy points to get in your IELTS listening, and it's something that you need to make sure that you're okay. How many zeros, okay? Because I know in English, often we say numbers differently to other languages, so make sure you're up on your numbers. to make sure that you get these easy points. Okay, so now we're looking for when does the car need next something in 4 months. Okay.
All right, thank you. When will it need its next motor test, by the way?
It's due in November, so that's 4 months.
Okay. One more question about the look of the car.
Okay, so again, this question came up quickly. Okay, so the main issue with IELTS is you only hear things once and the answers come quickly. So you saw that number 5 and number 6 really came up straight after each other. Okay, so you really need to be able to be focused in the test, and you need to be able to be practicing before you take the actual test, focusing in these like short bursts. So when does the car, he asked straight up, he's like, when will it need its next motor test, by the way? Okay, so we've got our keywords need next, okay? And then the salesperson says in November in 4 months. So we've got need next, we've got 4 months, so that we know that the words came in the gap between, and the answer was motor test, okay?
How is the paint and body work? Is it generally good?
Yes, as a matter of fact. Some cars this age have already got quite a few dents and dings, but this one's in top shape.
Great. Would it be okay for me to come to test drive it this week?
Of course.
Okay, so the answer here is going to be test drive. Okay, so they talk a little bit about the paint, and they talk about the paint condition, and then the guy on the phone literally says, is it okay? Would it be okay for me to come to test drive it this week? Okay, so again, they're paraphrasing. Instead of all right, they've switched all right to okay to check if you're able to pick that up as a keyword. Okay, so then we know that the answer is test drive. Is it going to be okay to test drive this week?
If you'd like to make a time now, I can go ahead and fill in our test drive form so you won't need to when you come in.
Yes, okay.
So when do you think you'll be here?
How about tomorrow morning?
All right. So that is July the 16th. And that's Mr. Fletcher, yes?
That's right, John Fletcher.
And where do you live, John? Do you have a house number?
That's 27 Maybury Road, Chesham.
And is that berry like a fruit?
No, Bury. Maybury.
Thank you. And finally, I'd like to give you our email address. That's so if you need to cancel, you can let us know quickly. Ready?
Yes, fire away.
It's cheapest@gmail.com. All one word.
cheapest@gmail.com. Okay, thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow.
Will do. Thanks for calling.
Okay, so we got those answers coming in. So we have the date of the drive, July 16th. So you can write whichever way around you want to. If you say 16th July, July 16th, either way will be fine for the test. Question 9, he said Maybury Road. It could be Maybury Road. He also said 27 Maybury Road. So you could say Maybury or 27 Maybury Road because that's his full address and it doesn't specify. It says write no more than 3 words and or a number. So 27 Maybury Road, if you wanted to just put Maybury, you could do because it says words and or a number. So you could say 27 Maybury Road or just Maybury Road would be fine. You know Maybury is key here because he spelled it out for you. So did you notice how I was listening and spelling as he was spelling it out? Again, those are easy points for you to get. And then cheapest@gmail.com. So they gave you this word to check, do you know how to spell cheapest? Okay. So this way, sometimes spelling is important for these tests and it's important to listen carefully along with them. Okay. So that was section 1 of the listening paper, and section 1 follows sort of similar rules. I always recommend to definitely use the time that they give you to read through the questions and think ahead about what keywords you're listening for or what kind of information might be coming in the gaps. Make sure you're ready to go as soon as it starts and you're making notes as you go through. It depends on your style. Some people like to write down everything they hear and then use the time afterwards to fill in their answer paper. It depends on your style. I prefer to be listening through and filling in the gaps as you go. Because then you can spend more time looking at the next set of questions. But that just depends on your personal style. And make sure that you do lots of tests like you have available on this website before you do it. So you can figure out what style works for you best in the listening test.